Hey there, I am glad you're here. I have a story to share. I am sure you shall love it. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe. Be comfortable, here I begin. We came for the thrill. 5 friends, deep in the Blue Mountains, chasing legends and laughter. But gradually we realized, some legends are real. Date, October 12, 2024. Time, 5:42 p.m. Location, Blue Mountains, Oregon, United States. The Blue Mountains, sprawled across the northeastern reaches of Oregon. Their ancient peaks, cloaked in the shadows of towering pines, stretch endlessly, veins of winding trails threading through them. The air hangs heavy with the musky scent of damp soil, mingled with the sharp tang of pine resin, as if the very forest breathes with the weight of time. Beneath the canopy, a world untouched by man unfurls, deep, dark forests that seem to hum with a quiet, unsettling energy. When dusk falls, the mountains fall into an eerie stillness, a quiet that presses against the soul, thick and suffocating. It's a place where legends aren't just told, they're born, their roots tangled in the very soil, and where the living and the lost often walk the same trails. People vanish here, swallowed by the wilderness, leaving only footprints that quickly fade away, as though the land itself had decided to forget them. Time slows, and the mountain's ancient breath whispers of things that vanish without a trace. Luke, the cocky one, rocked his Patagonia jacket and a brand new Barrett M82 hunting rifle, claiming, "You never know what's out here." Jade, with her goth-meets cottagecore aesthetic, wore a vintage leather jacket and Doc Martens. Ava sported her minimalist streetwear, while Riley was the classic influencer, obsessed with finding the perfect aesthetic shot for Instagram. Mason, was somewhere between chill and paranoid, always with an iPhone in hand and a flask of whiskey tucked in my backpack. The plan was simple: hike through the dense trails, crack open some beers, and camp under the stars. We set up camp near an old logging trail, miles from civilization. Cell service was nearly dead, 2 bars at best. Luke joked that the Illuminati controlled the towers to keep Bigfoot sightings under wraps. As the sun dipped behind the mountains with its beautiful golden and orange hue, we lit a campfire and passed the flask around. Ava played indie tracks on her Bluetooth speaker, while Riley snapped photos against the fading light. Time, 9:18 p.m. That's when we heard it. A low, faint sound from deep within the forest. Sound of footsteps. Then came a growl. Probably a bear or a wolf? Luke grinned, cocky as ever. Or Bigfoot coming to steal Mason's vape. We laughed, but something felt wrong. The forest had gone silent. No rustling leaves, no chirping insects. Just the crackle of the fire and that distant growl, repeating occasionally time after time. Riley, chasing her aesthetic, wandered off with her camera. "I need the perfect night shot," she said. We didn't think twice, until 20 minutes turned to 30. We waited. At least none of us dared to step alone in wilderness. Fear was more important than an Instagram post. "Maybe she's vibing with nature," Ava said, her voice trembling slightly. "We should probably go find her," Luke muttered. He grabbed his rifle, and we followed Riley's path. The deeper we went, the heavier the air felt. My iPhone flashlight barely cut through the darkness. Then we found it. Her phone, screen cracked, lying in the dirt. Nearby, something heavy moved. Slow. Then followed the same sounds. But it was more audible than ever. We bolted back to camp, hearts pounding. Time, 2:36 a.m. None of us slept that night. The fire burned low, and we were fucked up in our heads. We shouldn't have come here. That was the thought ringing in our heads. By dawn, we split up to search. Luke and I took the eastern trail, while Ava and Jade headed west. The forest felt endless and alive with something that didn't want us there. It was silent, yet there was a strange feeling that something was always watching our movements. Something always kept spotting us even if we hadn't recognized it yet. Then we saw it, Riley's hoodie, torn and snagged on a branch. Blood smeared across the fabric. We ran back to camp, panic gripping us. Ava and Jade returned empty-handed. Calling for help was pointless, no signal. Time, 8:13 p.m. As night fell again, that growl echoed through the woods. Louder, closer. Luke swore he saw a massive, shadowy figure between the trees. I told him he was losing it, but deep down I felt it too. By the second night, none of us spoke. Luke kept his rifle close. Jade clutched a hunting knife. The fire crackled, the only source of light in the oppressive darkness. Then from the shadows, a scream tore through the forest. Riley's voice. We sprinted toward the sound, but all we found was her torn jacket, drenched in blood. Massive, inhuman footprints led deeper into the woods. Date, October 14th, 2024. Time, 6:45 a.m. By the third day, Ava was gone. And that's when the real nightmare began. Date, October 13th, 2024. Time, 7:12 a.m. Location, Blue Mountains, Oregon, United States. The morning light struggled to break through the thick canopy of pines. The air was heavy, damp with dew, and filled with the haunting silence that had swallowed the forest since Riley disappeared. Ava was gone now. Just like Riley. We were in a panic state. Our heads all messed up as this was not something we had prepared for. Luke, Jade, and I stood by the dying campfire, eyes dark and pale from fear and sleeplessness. My hands trembled as I sipped cold coffee from a metal flask. Luke paced back and forth, gripping his Barrett M82, even though I don't think he had any hunting experiences before. This was all pointless. Jade sat on a fallen log, her knife resting on her lap, her face pale beneath the dark makeup she'd applied the day before. "We can't just sit here," Luke growled. "We have to find them." "Find what?" Jade snapped. "A forest demon? You saw those footprints, Luke. What the fuck was that?" I stayed quiet. My mind raced through every Reddit thread and YouTube video I'd watched about Bigfoot sightings in the Blue Mountains. Most were dismissed as hoaxes, but those who claimed to have seen it spoke of one thing: its eyes, glowing red in the dark, and the same sounds occurring in intervals. Time, 8:24 a.m. We decided to split up again. Stupid move in every horror story, but we were desperate. Luke and I took the north trail, while Jade stayed back to guard the camp. We hiked deeper into the forest, where the trees thickened with and the air grew even colder. Thicker. The ground was soft and damp, littered with broken branches and rotting leaves. Luke muttered about Ava and Riley, blaming himself for letting them wander off. I didn't respond. My eyes scanned the surroundings, every rustle of leaves sending chills up my spine. Then we found something. A torn piece of Ava's flannel shirt, caught on a jagged branch. Blood stained the fabric. Luke's face turned pale. "She was here," he whispered. I swallowed hard. "But where is she now?" A distant thud echoed through the woods. Heavy rhythmic footsteps. Luke raised his rifle, eyes narrowed. "You hear that?" I nodded, heart pounding. The sound grew louder, moving closer. Something massive moved between the trees. I caught a glimpse of matted fur and a towering silhouette before it disappeared behind the brush. Luke fired. The gunshot rang through the forest, sending birds scattering from the treetops, and to add to the horror, the birds even were silent before. We ran toward the spot where the creature had stood, but there was nothing. Just deep, inhuman footprints leading further into the forest. Time, 4:17 p.m. We packed our gear and loaded it into Luke's black Ford F-150, but the truck wouldn't start. Great. Now we're stuck here, Jade muttered. The sun began to set, but its golden orange didn't seem beautiful then. Every fallen twig, even the faintest of sounds now and then began to scare us. We weren't the fucking trained military. We didn't expect this. I checked my iPhone again. No service. Only the faint reflection of my pale face staring back. As darkness crept in, the forest came alive with strange sounds. Twigs snapping, low growls from the distance, and somewhere, far off in the woods, a faint, echoing scream. Ava's voice, or what was left of her. Time, 9:53 p.m. We built the fire higher and kept the rifle close. No one spoke. Jade stared into the flames, her eyes glassy. Luke gripped the rifle, knuckles white. I tried to convince myself this was just paranoia, that maybe Ava and Riley got lost, or we were overthinking the noises in the dark. Then, from the edge of the clearing, a shadow moved. Massive. I saw the red eyes. My breath caught in my throat. Luke raised the rifle, but before he could fire, the creature let out a guttural, bone-chilling roar that echoed through the mountains. Date, October 14, 2024. Time, 10:11 p.m. Location, Blue Mountains, Oregon, United States. The roar ripped through the forest, primal like the roar of a wounded lion. The depth of its sound was killing. My body froze. My mind screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Luke stood, rifle raised, eyes fixed on the tree line. "Come on, you freak. Show yourself," he shouted. Jade whimpered from her spot near the fire, clutching her knife like it could stop whatever was out there. The shadows between the pines shifted. Then it emerged from the darkness, moving slowly, as if our existence doesn't fucking matter. Its eyes red, locking onto us. "Holy!" I muttered, stepping back. Without giving any second thought, Luke fired straight. The creature flinched. It let out a guttural snarl and vanished into the underbrush. I guess we just made it angrier. "You hit it," I whispered. "Did I?" Luke muttered, reloading. Time, 11:24 p.m. We sat in a tight circle around the fire, backs pressed against each other. Jade's hands shook as she sipped from a bottle of cheap vodka we'd brought for fun. She wasn't cocky like Luke. She was breaking just like me. "I want out," she whispered. "I don't care about Riley or Ava anymore. I want out." Luke ignored her, eyes fixed on the shadows. "We're not leaving without them. We're not leaving at all if this thing keeps hunting us," I snapped. Silence settled over us again. The fire crackled, and somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. Then another sound, closer heavy breathing. I turned and my heart stopped. Just beyond the edge of the firelight, two glowing eyes stared at us from the darkness. "Luke," I hissed. He spun, raising the rifle, but the creature was already moving. Branches snapped as it circled us, darting between the trees. "Come on, show yourself," Luke shouted. A sudden thud echoed behind us. Jade screamed. We turned to find a bloody hand dangling from a low branch, Ava's hand. If it hadn't for the tattoo, we wouldn't have even recognized it. The skin color was already fading with scent of rotten meat. Luke lost it. He fired wildly into the trees, screaming obscenities. "Go to hell, fucker. Leave us alone." Time, 2:19 a.m. The fire burned low. Luke paced, muttering to himself. Jade sobbed quietly, rocking back and forth. I felt numb. We were trapped. No signal. No escape. And that thing out there wasn't done with us yet. Then, from the darkness, came the sound we dreaded most. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Closer. I gripped my knife, ready for whatever came next. Luke raised his rifle, but his hands shook. The creature stepped into the dim light. 7 feet tall, covered in matted fur. "Run," I whispered. None of us moved. Date, October 15th, 2024. Time, 2:21 a.m. Location, somewhere in the Blue Mountains. The creature lunged with speed. I knew bears could fucking move fast. But this thing was even faster and agile. Instinct kicked in, and I dove to the side as Luke fired. The gunshot roared through the forest, but he missed. Luke cursed and pulled the trigger again. The bullet struck the creature's shoulder, causing it to stagger. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding. "Get to the truck!" I shouted. Jade bolted first, stumbling over roots and rocks in her panic. Luke and I followed, but the creature charged again. It swiped at Luke, claws catching his jacket and tearing the fabric. He stumbled, falling hard onto the damp ground. "Luke!" I turned back, grabbing a fallen branch and swinging it with all my strength. It cracked against the creature's arm, but it was like hitting solid stone. The beast let out a growl and turned towards me. Its stench was so horrible that I even felt like puking in the midst of that terrible encounter. Luke rolled to the side and fired again, this time hitting its leg. The creature roared in pain and staggered back. "Move!" Luke shouted, scrambling to his feet. We sprinted toward the truck. Jade was already inside, frantically trying to start the engine. The beast was behind us, crashing through the underbrush like a freight train. Luke reached the passenger side and threw the door open. I dove into the truck bed, gripping the edge as Jade twisted the key in the ignition. The engine sputtered. "Oh fuck!" Jade screamed, slamming her palm against the dashboard. The creature emerged from the darkness, blood dripping from its wounds. It let out a deafening roar and charged. "Come on!" I yelled. Date, October 15th, 2024. Time, 3:34 a.m. Location, Baker County Sheriff's Office, Oregon. The fluorescent lights inside the small sheriff's office flickered faintly. Jade slumped in a plastic chair, eyes vacant and mascara streaking down her pale face. Luke leaned against the wall, rifle confiscated and locked away as per protocol. I sat between them, clutching my iPhone with trembling hands. We'd driven through the night, dirt-streaked and bloodied, and stormed into the station, desperate for help. "2 people are missing," I told the officer at the front desk, my voice trembling. "We were attacked by something out there." Sheriff Bradley, a man in his 50s with a graying beard and tired eyes, eyed us skeptically. "Bigfoot, huh?" He let out a dry chuckle. "You kids been drinking out in those woods?" Luke stepped forward, fists clenched. "We're not making this up. Our friends are gone. We found blood. We saw the thing with our own eyes." The sheriff sighed, grabbing a notepad. "All right, start from the beginning." We told them everything. The camping trip, the strange sounds, Riley's disappearance, Ava's bloody flannel, the massive creature that hunted us through the forest. The deputy taking notes exchanged glances with another officer, barely suppressing a smirk. "We'll send a search party at first light," Sheriff Bradley said, scribbling something half-heartedly on his notepad. "But you gotta understand, people go missing in those woods all the time. Usually hikers who wander off or get into trouble with the terrain. The Bigfoot stuff." He shook his head. "That's campfire talk." My blood boiled. "We saw it. We shot it. There's blood on the ground." The sheriff's face hardened. "Even if I believed you, which I don't, this town's already got enough trouble with conspiracy nuts and Bigfoot hunters flooding these mountains. We can't stir up more panic." "So you're just gonna do nothing?" Jade snapped. "I said we'll look," he replied. "But don't hold your breath." Time, 5:12 a.m. They let us go after filing a half-hearted missing persons report. No follow-up questions. No urgency. We sat in Luke's truck outside the station, the sky slowly turning pale as dawn crept over the horizon. "They're not gonna find them," Jade said, her voice cracking. "No," I muttered. "They won't." The sheriff wouldn't send more than a couple of men to comb the trails. And by the time they did, whatever was out there would have already buried the evidence. Luke clenched the steering wheel, knuckles white. If the cops won't do anything, we go back in. Are you insane? Jade snapped. That thing almost killed us. Riley and Ava are still out there, he shot back. I'm not leaving them to die like animals. Silence filled the cab. I stared at the distant tree line, dark and endless. I hated that Luke was right. We had no choice. We were going back. Date, October 15th, 2024. Time, 6:23 p.m. Location, the same Blue Mountains, Oregon. The sun dipped behind the towering pines as we made our way back into the forest. The air was heavy, thick with an eerie stillness that clung to our skin. Jade didn't want to come, but fear of leaving us alone kept her tethered to the group. Luke led the way, rifle in hand, eyes scanning every shadow. I carried a hunting knife and a flashlight, though I knew neither would help if that thing came for us again. We retraced our steps to the clearing where we'd last seen Ava's torn shirt. The earth was still marked with deep, inhuman footprints. Blood stained the dirt where Luke's bullet had struck the creature. We stick together, Luke said. No splitting up. Jade nodded, trembling. Time, 7:04 p.m. We followed the trail deeper into the forest, moving toward the place where Riley had vanished. The deeper we went, the more the forest seemed to breathe around us, twigs snapping, leaves rustling, low grunts echoing from the shadows. Then we found something. Riley's backpack, torn and soaked in mud. Nearby, a ripped piece of his sneaker. Jade let out a strangled sob, backing away. He's gone. Luke clenched his jaw and pressed forward. We stumbled into a clearing littered with bones, animal and human. Some fresh, some rotten. But the stench! Fuck, it's so metallic and rotten. In the center stood a massive tree, its bark clawed and splintered. At its base lay Ava's body, torn, mutilated, barely recognizable. Jade collapsed, screaming. Then she screamed, "It's here! Look!" 40 yards away in a distant brush we saw the same eyes. Luke fired, but it just stood there, like it doesn't even care. Then it charged again with mad speed. I dove to the side as Luke took the direct hit, flying through the air and crashing against a tree with a crack. Jade ran. I wanted to follow, but a sound broke through. Distant sirens echoed through the mountains. The sheriff's search team. The beast let out a snarl and retreated into the darkness. I dragged Luke's broken body back to the trail. Jade was already gone, sprinting toward the sound of the approaching search team. The cops found us, but it didn't matter. They never found Riley. Or the creature. The sheriff called it an animal attack and closed the case. We left the mountains that night, but a part of us stayed behind. The part that would never forget the red eyes burning through the darkness. A warning to anyone reading this. Don't go chasing legends. Don't think you can outsmart the unknown. We thought we were brave. We thought we could handle the wilderness. We were wrong. If you ever find yourself in the Blue Mountains, turn back. If you like what you heard, do subscribe to my channel. I shall be back with more stories. Or you can say files. But either way, these events occur all the time. Thank you for being here.